I'm going to open the Board of Selectmen's meeting for November 29th, 2021. Will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Anyone for public comment and announcement?
Good evening, Cindy Williams, Executive Director of the Harwich Chamber. Just wanted to remind everyone this Friday, believe it or not, is the Harwich Christmas Stroll. 5:30 in Doan Park is the tree lighting with our fabulous Harwich Elementary School music department. And then we'll do the tree lighting with the Masons of the Pilgrim Masonic Lodge. And then everyone will be able to enjoy shopping, dining, and we have a brass Regency band at William Ravis, and the town band will be with us as well. So 5:30, Doan Park, please. Harwich Port will be the stroll, yes, but the 7 villages are starting on Wednesday with the tree lighting in the 7 villages of Harwich.
Thank you, Cindy. Anyone else for public comment and announcement? We're going to move right into 2 public hearings that we have tonight. First, I just want to announce on the under contracts A, related to Continental Drive and Witta. There was a Scribner's error on the agenda, and it says $12,154,000. It is not, in fact, that much money for those 2 roads. It's $1,509,245, but we'll get into that when we get into contracts. So 2 public hearings. The first public hearing is the tax rate. And we're gonna go right to Richard Waystack with that. Richard, just out of an abundance of caution, I am gonna read the legal notice that was put in the paper. I'll split this with Mary tonight. I'll read this one and she can read the next one. The Harwich Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Monday, November 29th, 2021, no earlier than 6:30 p.m. at the Harwich Town Hall, located at 732 Main Street, Harwich, Mass., during a regular scheduled meeting. The hearing will be in person. An in-person meeting. All members of the public having an interest in this topic are cordially invited to attend the public hearing and provide information and testimony relevant to this matter. The hearing is for the purpose of deciding whether all property shall be taxed at the same rate for fiscal year 2022 as set forth in Chapter 40, Section 56 of the Massachusetts General Laws, and that was advertised in the Cape Cod Chronicle, November 11th, 2021.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Powers. And I want to thank the members for joining us in a joint meeting on November 15th where we did a classification workshop discussing classification in and of itself. A new member of the board and a member coming back, and just refreshing memories before this hearing this evening. I am Richard Waystack. I am the chair of the Board of Assessors. I am joined tonight by Mr. Bruce Nightingale, the vice chair, who's been a long-term member of the Board of Assessors. Also, have to just give a quick shout out to our staff, Donna Molino and her staff, Carol Capola, our finance director, who's been exceptional, and Gail McAleer, who works with PK Associates, not KP, but PK Associates, who is our third-party contractor who helps the town with the valuation and field services, which we actually contract out to do. I'm here tonight, as I've been for many, many years, offering the same recommendation. Because you know in this process, Mr. Chairman, we as the Board of Assessors just make a recommendation to you and to your board. You actually decide what the classification will be for the community. But at that meeting that was duly posted, joint meeting on November 15th, we as a board voted unanimously to vote a residential factor of 1, so that each class maintains 100% of its full value tax share and not to shift the tax burden from the residential and open space property classes to the commercial, industrial, and personal property classes. That's done for a reason. And if you have seen in your packet that our residential class consists of the majority of this community. Over 92% of this community is classified as residential. We have a very, very small class for commercial industrial. We have another class, and I had a discussion today with someone, a taxpayer in the town, and they said, well, can't we just tax second homeowners at a different rate. And I said, it's not that easy. We are restricted by what the Department of Revenue, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, allows us to do. And I think it's important to remind people that in essence, we already do that. Our second homeowners pay a personal property tax, which is in addition to what they're paying in their property taxes. So we currently already charge our second homeowners a higher level of tax than we do our residential taxpayers. On the matter of an open space discount, we also recommend to you not to grant an open space discount, which would again shift the tax burden from the open space property class to the residential property class. Also, not to grant a residential exemption and not to grant a small business exemption. We've gone through this for many, many years, and people hear of shifting the tax burden to other classes. We just don't have the commercial industrial property to be able to do that without impacting a number of people. One misconception, when we talk about a residential exemption and shifting, not all of our resident taxpayers would be able to take advantage of that. Because as you know, when the value of the town increases, which it has, you've all seen the market and seen what's happened with the market. So the value of the town has increased. But that does not mean that we can have a commensurate raise in taxes, because as the value goes up, the tax rate comes down. And there are times that I've heard people call me and ask me, well, I understand all that. You said the value goes up, the tax rate goes down, but my taxes still went up. That is not what we do at the Board of Assessors, nor do you as the Board of Selectmen. It's important that people realize that overage of 2.5%, which the Commonwealth allows us to charge, that comes from spending at town meeting. That's what the taxpayers vote every year. So if people vote additional services and spending from the community, that's what impacts that tax rate. So, Mr. Chairman, you've heard this for a number of years, the same, I hate to say it, but song and dance. The facts haven't changed. We're not increasing our commercial industrial areas and classifications. We see who we are as a community. We're a residential community. So we will make that, as we did on the 15th, that recommendation to you to vote the residential factor of 1, not to grant open space, residential, or small business exemption. That is my report, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wastack. Anyone in the public have anything, any comments or questions? I would take a motion from a member of the board to close the public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, Joe. I will turn it over to questions from the board, and I'll start with Mary.
I've spent a lot of time on this because I did have interest in that residential exemption. So I have probably driven both Richard and Carol crazy with my questions. But I've concluded the same as Richard, that leave it alone. So I'm good.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not on point for tonight because I'm anticipating voting for this tonight, but a number of you have heard me say this. It's not exactly what Truro and other people were looking at, but I am really interested over the course of the next year, and it's probably going to require legislation to do. For people that have second, third, fourth homes that are not occupied in any way for the majority of the year, I'm really interested in looking at them now in terms, because it's getting out of hand, in terms of either helping out with the affordable housing problem by taxing them more. I don't even care if they rent them out, as long as there's someone occupying the residence, you know, for the majority of for more than half of the year. But it's getting to the point where so many people are buying up properties where they're using them for 2 or 3 months and then just taking a hike, closing them down, having a home watch service, look over them, and it's deleting inventory in a massive kind of way that we've never seen before. So I'm just warning you that that's a discussion I want to start having during the course of the next year.
It's funny, Mr. Chairman, if I may, what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
I think many of you who grew up in this community remembered the days that when Labor Day came, you could roll up the sidewalks. No one was here. It was an off-season, and the off-season was from Labor Day to Memorial Day of the next year. Years and years ago, people bought second homes, had cottages, and they just used them 3 months a year. And we see what's coming back again. For many years, we had many residents moving in, became a sort of a bedroom community of Boston. But now we're seeing it happen again. But there were the days that the season closed, and after Labor Day, the houses all closed up till the spring of next year.
I'm only saying this because we're having a crisis where we can't even keep doctors and police and fire personnel in town. So it is similar, but it is not the same.
Mr. Chairman, and it's a good point, and thank you, Mr. Howell, because it reminds me that we filed legislation this year. The Board of Assessors, through you, and town meeting authorized us to have Representative Peake file legislation so that we could offer some tax credit to those under the age of 60 who are experiencing financial hardship. We have a number of programs available for people over the age of 60, of our veterans, well-deserved, for those who have sight impairment. But there was nothing for anybody under the age of 60. And in looking at shifting the burden, frankly, if we can get this legislation to work, the benefit of using an exemption for those under 60 would have a far greater benefit to those taxpayers than any shift in the tax would do. Because that would offer up to $1,000 exemption for those facing hardship. Versus if you looked at your packet, what a shift in 10 or even 20% of the classification would do, that $1,000 exemption would have far greater impact to those families. And if you want to change how things are done at the DOR, we file legislation. And again, we're not afraid. We've done it a couple times already with your blessing, and would be happy to do it again. But it is a long process. It doesn't happen quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry?
No, I'm in agreement with your recommendation.
Julie?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. The classification workshop was very helpful, and although we all think we have different ways to interpret it, you make it quite clear that there's really one way to do this, so thank you.
Thank you. I have nothing in the packet tonight. We have suggested motions. We will read those and vote on them individually.
Okay, I move that we vote a residential factor of 1.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, Joe?
I move to not grant an open space exemption.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0, Joe?
I move to not grant a residential exemption.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
I move to not grant a small commercial exemption.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you.
Good.
Going to move on to the second public hearing, which is approve proposed fee amendments to Harbor Management Plan Appendix B and Marine Fee Schedule Appendix F Shellfish Fee Schedule. And we're just looking for the public notice.
Okay, I've got it. The Town of Harwich Board of Selectmen, notice of public hearing, proposed fee amendments. The Harwich Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on November 29th, 2021, no earlier than 6:30 PM in the Don B. Griffin Room located at Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, for the purpose of reviewing proposed fee amendments to the Harbor Management Plan, Appendix B, Marine Fee Schedule, and Appendix F, Shellfish Fee Schedule. All members of the public having an interest in this topic are cordially invited to attend the public hearing and provide information and testimony relevant to this issue. Signed by Michael D. McCaskill, Chairman, Julie Kavanaugh, Larry Valentine, Mary Anderson, Don Howell, Harwich Board of Selectmen, in the Cape Cod Chronicle, November 11th and 18th, 2021.
Public hearing is open. I will start with the Harbor Master, John Rendon. John, we all have the information in the packet tonight, and I assume each board member read it. So if you want to give a brief overview to the public, and then I will open it up to them for comments on yours, and then we'll go to Heinz on his.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, John Rendon, Harbor Master. I've indicated in Appendix B that you have in your packet, that's our fee schedule for all of Waterways fees that we have. And indicated in there in red are the proposed rate increase that we're going to be addressing tonight. I've done surveys, rate surveys on the big items, which is the recreational slip rates, the seasonal rates, the mooring rates, and the transient fees. There are other fees that I didn't survey. I mean, we'd be here all night if I did, but I mean, those are the big items, and I'll briefly go through those. Generally speaking, with the exception of the transient rates, I'm looking at an 8% increase, which actually turns out to be 2% per year. I have, if approved, what I'm proposing, it'll result in an approximate annual increase of about $118,000, and that's annual. The last rate increase that we had was 4 years ago. In 2018, it was the first year of our marina being renovated. So if I can just go to the first graph, recreational slips. You know, when you do these surveys, it's a little hard to get a real accurate picture because different towns assess their rates differently. You know, some do resident, non-resident. Some have a flat rate, a single per foot rate for all boat sizes. Some include electric and water in their rate. Some differ based upon time of season. So, you know, I try to get a general sense, a comparative for us to look at to realize that I think a rate increase is warranted. In this particular case, it's recreational slip rates, and I'm looking strictly at a 30-foot vessel. In Harwich, we have 4 different categories of rates for our recreational seasonal slips. We have a 20-foot rate, a 30-foot rate, a 40-foot rate, and a 50-foot rate. And, you know, the rate increases based upon the size of the boat. In the 30-foot category, our current rate is $105 per foot. So for a 30-foot boat at $105, it ends up being about $3,150 for a 30-foot slip for somebody who has a 30-foot slip. With the increase, we're looking at, again, an 8% increase, so we're talking $113 per foot. It's a $240 increase to the slip holder, making it $3,390. So it brings it close to the average. You see the average, the last bar there, 115. It puts us pretty much at the average. There are some, you know, significantly higher. Falmouth has a flat rate of $161, and they have, it only changes when they get to a boat that's over 70 feet. Well, we don't allow boats that size in Harwich. I mean, we can't accommodate that. So again, you know, based upon all the factors, I think we're fair. So if you look at, you know, what it does to a 40-foot and a 50-foot rate, so a 40-foot rate, the increase would go to $140 a foot. So, and then we only have 5 50-foot slips, and that rate would be $173 a foot. So you factor those in, because we have varying rates for different boat sizes. I think we're in the ballpark, and I think it's a fair increase, working it out to be about 2% per year since 2018 when our last rate change was. If I can go to the moorings. Again, you know, we looked at different towns, how they do their rates. Again, this picture, what do we pay for a 20-foot vessel, 24-foot vessel? I kind of tried to get, you know, the largest population of boat size we have as the snapshot of where we're at. And so while this looks like we are significantly lower, one of the things that it doesn't account for is we also assess a waterway user fee. So on top of the 135 that Harwich, somebody with a mooring in Harwich, you have to add $55 to that because that's what they pay to have the mooring fee plus the waterway user fee to have their boat operate in Harwich. So I have one mistake in this that I just want to quickly correct. Chatham is not at 234. That's when they also have a waterway user fee. And if you add the user fee to that, it ends up being 234. When I was preparing this graph, I started going down that road and I forgot to change it. Their rate is $3.50 per foot. They do a per foot charge. And so it would come out to be about $85 for a 24-foot vessel length. And that would bring our average, that correction would bring our average from 195 that's indicated there to 176. So I'm suggesting again an 8% increase for moorings, and that would bring that 135 to 146. It would cost an extra $11 for that mooring permit holder, that rate change. We also have 3 different categories of moorings. So we have 24 foot or less, we have 25 to 35 feet, and then over 35. And there's different rates for those. And then the last is transient. If you could go to that one, Caleb, that'd be great. Our transient rates are low, I think. And I think there's room for a little bit more of an increase. Most towns do just a per foot charge. We currently do, again, I was looking at a 30-foot vessel. Our current transient rates, we have boats up to 35 foot in length paid $2 a foot per night. And then when you get 36 and over, the rate is currently $275 a foot per night. So if you compare some of these other towns, most of them, all of them are above that. A good, comparison, Sandwich is $3, Falmouth is $3, Dennis is very high. They're $4 a foot, and that's across the board. They don't have different categories. It's just you go in, you want a transient slip, you're paying $4 per foot. So I'm recommending we do a 16% increase. I think if we go from $2 to $2.30 for that lower rate, and then $3.20 for the upper rate, I think we get closer to that average. We make a lot of money in transient dockage, and it's a very popular spot. It's gotten more and more popular with our new marina, and we, I think we do a pretty good job of making sure our marina is full. We haven't had to turn many people away. We rent slips that are vacated by our permit holders. They go for a week somewhere, or they go here for the weekend. We rent those slips behind them. So, it's good revenue for the town, and it's a good service for our boating community. So that's where I'm at with my recommendation for rate changes. On Appendix B, there's a lot of rates there. If there's anything you have questions on, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay.
Anyone in the public have a question on the marina part of this, not the shellfish part? Okay, we'll invite Hines up. Talk about shellfish.
Good evening, Board of Selectmen, Chairman McCaskill, Joe Powers, Town Administrator. I'm Heinz Proff, Natural Resources Director. What does shellfish have to do with the harbor management plan? It's an appendix that goes on with the management plan. So any kind of augmentation or edits to those over the years in a public setting, posted, do quite well in terms of the recurring changes that are done at that time. The shellfish rates for the town were last addressed 4 years ago. They've remained steady for the last 4 years, and in the packet you can see the amount of permits that we've sold over the years. I've proposed slight increases to those. They're $5 in each case. We charge a little different for the different rates that we have. I could go through those, but basically we have resident, non-resident, commercial, resident senior, that's somebody 65 years or older, and one-day permits. these permits in what terms of what we charge fall in line with the general Cape, what they charge. But 4 years ago when I came in front of the board and everything, and I had those comparative rates, it's really difficult to do apples to apples in this case, because what towns have in terms of resource available, the number of days a week that you allow somebody, the type of permit that's going out there and what's allowed to be taken with those permits really varies. So if we just kind of have our permit rates, see what we sell, we don't have any really large fluctuations in terms of decrease or increase in the number of permits sold. Every 4 years, if we address them and slightly increase them, which I've proposed, I think is a very fair and just way to do that. Being out on the flats the last couple months, I've kind of suggested to folks, because they normally renew and purchase their following permit for the 2022 season, end of December. And I've, brought this up to them that there might be an increase. And I've explained it to them, I haven't had any pushback whatsoever. They think it's the greatest deal in town, the shellfish permit that we have.
Thank you, Heinz. Any questions of the public on the shellfish portion of the changes? Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
I move that we close the public hearing.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. Board comments or questions, starting with Larry.
Thank you, Michael. On the slip fees, one thing is, I wanted to compliment doing this early on so people have an idea what's going on for next year. That's always helpful. A lot of work on the surveys and stuff. I did have a couple questions on that. Regarding the commercial rates, how do we compare with other towns on that? Because that's part maybe I'm more concerned about is, because as we know, the commercial guys are having a rough time anyway.
I didn't survey that piece, so I'd have to get back to you. Our our rates on the commercial boats, are less than our recreational, as you can see at the appendix. But I would think it's unfair to assess an increase on everybody but the commercial fleet.
Yeah.
I mean, we currently offer lower rates for
Yeah,
our
no,
commercial and.
Yeah, I just want to know if you looked at that.
I did not.
I'm fine with that. In addition to the fees, are we not now, we're also charged now for a separate fee to help support the docks and stuff. Is that still in place?
We still do waterway user fees,
Waterway
if that's what
user
you're
fees is
speaking
what I'm
of. And
talking
yes, sir,
about.
we do. We assess
And-
waterway user fees.
And those aren't changing?
Those are not changing.
Okay.
We're still at 135 and 55, I believe it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Looks good.
Julie?
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with the increase, and I guess just one general question I would have, is there anywhere in here that you think it would be beneficial to do a flat rate? But if not, I understand.
I mean, to me, you get some of these bigger boats, more space, more dockage, more services, more, it's, to me, I think a varying rate based upon length of boat, I think makes sense. It certainly probably would be easier on us if it was just a flat rate, to be honest with you, but I think this is fair.
Okay, no, thank you.
Sure.
Mary?
No, I think it's pretty reasonable to go 4 years without an increase, and you've certainly done a good job with your homework, so I have no questions.
Thank you.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, just to refresh everybody's memory, do you have to be a resident to reside in Harwich to get a slip or a mooring?
You do not.
Okay. I was going to say, normally I would be segueing immediately to, this isn't about surveying your competitors because it's driven by the expense of you to provide the service under law. This is one of those areas where if we get really too low, we're going to get swamped. The list is going to be 30 years out to wait for these things. So I'm okay as long as we're in the middle.
Yeah, and that's where I try to be, frankly. I'd like to be kind of near the average. I think it makes sense. I do think we have a premier facility, and when you compare what we offer to other towns, I think we're in good shape. So,
But I repeat, other people coming in want to get rate increases from us. They need to be able to verify what their costs are, relate that to what they're asking for in the charges. But this is wholly different. The state considers the waterways theirs, so I know
Right.
that you can just come in and put a request in.
Right. Sure.
We're about 30 years out anyway, aren't we?
Yeah, kids are getting.
Not quite 30, but we're getting there.
I think a very fair increase, John, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that the transient slip fees were way too low.
Yeah.
Our facility is second to nobody in your chart, so that harbor is run very professionally, and I've heard no complaints this year. Just great things about how great the harbor is, so.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Can I get a motion?
I move that we vote to approve the proposed fee amendments to Harbor Management Plan Appendix B, Marine Fee Schedule, and Appendix F, Shellfish Fee Schedule.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heinz. Consent agenda?
I move that we vote to approve the consent agenda, which is the Board of Selectmen minutes for February 24th, 2020.
Remember it well. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. New business, annual committee meetings, and we'll start with the Conservation Commission.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Ernest Crabtree, the Chair of the Conservation Commission, and with me is the Vice Chair, John Ketchum.
Good evening.
You have a copy of our annual report. I don't intend to go through it line by line. I'll try to paraphrase the important issues that are in the report for you. Presently, the commission is at full membership with 7 full-time members. However, one has expressed that he may be leaving the commission soon, and we have one other that is going through some family issues, so we'll probably be down before the end of next year anyhow, 2 commission members, unless we get some additional members in. That being said, if we could find some alternates that we could have attend the meetings and sort of learn the ropes as we go, that would be helpful at the same time. This far in 2021, we've issued close to 225 applications and permits, more than we did in all of 2020, which was the highest year to date for us prior to this year. So the business that we're having to entertain is going up consistently. As a result, the year has brought many applications with a higher level of complexity than in previous years, which has made it clear to us that we do need to change our regulations and our bylaws, which have been presented to you, the changes that we were proposing, and are on the town warrant for the May meeting. Violations of the Wetland Protection Act and bylaws continue to occur. Thus far in 2021, we've had 13 separate instances of violations across the town. The total fines that we've levied to date are $48,300. And we have another approximately $70,000 in fines that are pending. Most of these fines are on 2 properties owned by the same individual. So it's a bit of a challenge for us. Conservation Commission has care and custody of just under 1,000 acres of conservation land, and we have the responsibility to manage those lands, trails, clearing fences, clearing trails, adding fences. The hurricane that we recently have, or rather the nor'easter that we had, provided us with a lot of opportunity as far as down trees and everything else. So we are working with a number of outside firms like DPW, Conservation Trust, and AmeriCorps to deal with those issues. So that's pretty much the summary that we have. We would like to recognize we have 2 members that joined us this year, James Atkinson and Alan Hall. Both have grasped on to the challenges of the commission pretty quickly, I think. And would like to thank our departing members, Carolyn O'Leary and James Donovan, for the service that they've provided to us for a number of years. With that, we'll take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Larry?
Well, thanks for your report, Ernie, and your committee may be the hardest working committee of them all in terms of long meetings. And all the discussions you had on regulation change and looking into the bylaw change. It's much appreciated. I'm too somewhat intrigued by the increase in the applicants in the business, basically. And I don't know whether that's because of the pandemic and the housing price increases, that people are trying to push the envelope more than they were before, and take advantage and see how much they can get away with. But I appreciate your work, and keep it up.
Thank you.
Julie?
No, I thought your report was excellent. It's unfortunate. I've been following a couple of those violations for a while, so I know that makes your job that much more difficult. So I appreciate the work and the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Mary?
No, great report, and I do remember your presentation on the bylaw changes, which looked very good. Is there anything that can be done beyond fines if it's one individual with two properties? Do we have other options?
Well, I don't know, John, if you want to address that, but from my perspective, the issue is not necessarily the fact that it's one property, it's the number of fines on that property, the number of violations that are taking place. And, we've worked hard, and Amy has worked hard with the owner of that property, and we've just gotten no response whatsoever. It's a very difficult thing to do because our fines provide for $300 per violation per day that the fine is in effect, that the violation is in effect. So that's sort of what drives the numbers that we're seeing on that particular, those two pieces of property. But
If I just might add that, I think Amy in particular has been very patient at trying to encourage the individual involved to come into compliance or talk to us. And, I've seen her deal with a lot of other situations where her patience pays off, but in this case, it just hasn't. And I'm not, I think it's just a very specific situation. I haven't seen anything like this previously on the commission, as someone who has violations and just doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to do anything about it apparently, or is unable to for one reason or another.
Maybe my question is better addressed to us. Is there something we can do about that?
Well, is town council involved already?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And the first set of fines that we levied on these properties was appealed and dismissed. So there's a second appeal, I think, that's pending for the next round of fines that have been imposed. But we don't know where that will end up at this point.
Well, thank you for your persistence in taking care of the town.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I should start off that I'm your current liaison, and I just wanted to say in public what I've said in private to you guys. I take the more purist approach. So the liaison is a conduit for you have something to say that the selectmen should know. It goes through the liaison. I don't consider myself the fifth Beatle. As such, we've talked. Brad and I talked. And I would encourage you, if you have anything like, a conversation that we have any problems, pick up the phone and I'll be there. But I don't like looking over anybody's shoulder. So with that, because you're all adults and you're all doing a good job. And the report is excellent. The regulatory committees mean a lot to us in general because they impact people's property rights. And you need an educated a bunch of folks who are serving. With that in mind, you have the bully pulpit. We could use some alternates. It took us a while to piece together the full-time committee, but you're right. It would be nice to have some people that are waiting in the wings that understand the process and could step in when the vacancies occur. So, anybody listening out there, we could use some people applying for this.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, right now, I'm not aware of anybody who had the interest, or you'd get somebody.
Yeah, all right, fine.
Great report and great work.
Okay.
Thank you, entire committee.
Michael, if I may, let me just make, I'll probably get in trouble for singling anyone out, but, because we all, as Joe knows, we all know we have a great staff, but Amy does an incredible job.
It does.
You brought her name up, but her patience is it sets a bar that I can only dream of getting that high in terms of patience and working with people. I never have anyone I may disagree with her, you know, and you regulatory committees, sometimes there's disagreement, but had no one say a bad word or did not compliment Amy on willingness to talk and discuss the issues, so.
She's very level-headed, and more importantly, I think she's very intelligent as far as the regulations and everything else. She can quote them to you 7 ways to Sunday and know the background to them as well, so she's a tremendous asset for this town.
Go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, since Larry said that, I feel compelled to do the overview of this. As we often confuse the Health Department with the Board of Health and the Conservation Agent with the Conservation Commission, Amy is staff support for you folks. She does an excellent job, but the two have different roles. You set policy and actually are citizen eyes on applications to mate the law with the person who's making the application, and she quotes the law and keeps you on the straight and narrow.
We generally agree with her, but we will occasionally disagree.
Which is why they're volunteer
And-
boards.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brooks Academy Museum Commission. David, you can stand or sit, whatever you prefer.
I'll stand. I'll keep my distance. Hello, everyone. Nice to be back. I'm David Spitz, the chair of the Brooks Academy Museum Commission. One of the members here today, Sandy Hall, who is back there either to back me up or throw darts or simply wait for her committee report next. I think you're all pretty familiar with what's been going on over there. We're making good progress on a couple of fronts. I think you can see the improvements that have been recently made at the Crowell Barn. And we've got a little more to do there, so that's good. We have a lot more to do with the main building. We have hired the architect with subs of a structural engineer and a mechanical engineer. Both of the latter have been through the building extensively, taking measurements, looking at all the residential ductwork apparently that's in the basement that we have to consider what we're going to do with it now that we're digging out the rest of the basement and planning to use it. So there are a couple of difficult questions to be answered. Other than that, the consultants are working hard. We originally asked to be ready to go out to bid at January 1st, knowing that that was going to be impossible. And we currently are hoping to go out to bid in February or possibly March. So we're making good progress. We've got another series of meetings this week with the architects. Joe, I think you're coming over for part of that, and that'll be very helpful. We're worried about what the bidding climate will be based on recent inflation and how busy all of the contractors in the vicinity are, but we're going to get our plans ready and see how we do. We did not seek to go back to CPC this year. We probably will next year because in the third paragraph, we've listed all the other things that we need to do. Every time I drive by, I see more paint peeling, and we've got to get at that, but we know we've got to do these other things first. We have full membership with your recent appointment, which is very helpful. And we've had 8 meetings last year. We've had full attendance. And I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, David. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not so much of a question, it's an observation, because people tend to put things into cubby holes. This is no less, keeping our historic preservation is no less important than how we deal with people who need housing, who are open space. It's a custodianship as far as I'm concerned. And this building particularly is a centerpiece of our remaining history, and how we treat it shows an awful lot about how we value history.
I agree.
Mary?
No, just thank you. I know you were pleased with the bid, and it sounds like the progress is going as you knew it would with the Lynn Spencer and the other gentleman.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that.
Doug Manley, who also worked on the
Yes.
library.
Yes.
Both of which were at a different firm at the time, but they've
Yeah.
now got their own firm.
So I'm glad it's going as we hoped. Thank you.
So far, yes.
Julie?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you for the summary. I appreciate it. And I was over for the memorial for Peg Rose, and, you know, I know there's plenty of work on the barn to do, but everything looks good, and, you know, the trees were just planted, so thanks for your hard work.
Larry?
Keep it up.
We will.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Bylaw Charter Review Committee.
What do you want to bet he leaves now? See, look.
She stayed for you.
Yeah, really, next time I'll come after he's done. Good evening, everybody. How are you all? Good?
Good, thanks.
Happy Thanksgiving. We've had only 3 meetings of the Bylaw Charter Review Committee since it was reconstituted last spring. We've got good attendance. All our members are sworn in, all our ethics are done, and we've had some really good conversations. What we are looking to do is to take a look at the charter, look for ambiguities, look for things that conflict, check the bylaws, see that they match. But what I'd really most like to do right now is just take a couple of minutes to explain to people what the charter is and why it's important. It is our town's constitution. We are allowed to have a home rule charter because in 1966 the Massachusetts state legislature said we could if we wanted to. It allows us to make our own way on a lot of things. We can do things differently in some cases from Massachusetts state law, as long as it doesn't conflict with the state constitution or state law. It allows us to do all of these things without having to go to the legislature endlessly for special acts, which was a problem for the legislature back in the 60s. Things like in 1963, the town of Weymouth having to go to the legislature to get permission to make a payment to one Mr. Gunn to satisfy a moral obligation. So this is why we get to do this as a town within the town without having to ask the state's permission. All of the things that we do get vetted through the state attorney general's office to make sure that they're not in conflict. But the charter is the governing document of the town of Harwich. It supersedes the bylaws. If there's a conflict in the bylaws, the charter prevails. So in order of how governance goes, you start with your charter. It's fairly broad, it's fairly simple, it doesn't try to get into too much detail. We leave that to the bylaws. If the bylaws are in conflict, then the charter prevails again. If both are silent on a particular matter, then you go to state law. So that's, in a nutshell, how this all works. And the town meeting gets to decide whether it does or does not want to change a charter based on the recommendations at the end of the day of the Board of Selectmen. So we have had the pleasure at our October meeting of hosting our town administrator, who is very shy and at a loss for words most of the time. And we covered a number of areas. We were looking for his input, his view, what works for him, what doesn't, what could be better. We talked about a town calendar. We talked about a couple of ambiguities in Section 4 of the Charter, which we can get into. This is not the time to get into the weeds on any of this. We talked about deadlines in the Charter, because some of them seem a little difficult, and whether we want to try to find a way to rejigger those at some point. We will be meeting with the chairman of the Finance Committee in early January to have that discussion and whatever else he might want to tell us that is or isn't working. So that's basically it. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you. Start with you, Larry.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Sandra. I appreciate your, it's nice to have a full committee going again.
It's nice to have a full committee, and we've, basically got most of the old crew plus Ray Gottwald, who is a good addition. So we thank you for that, too.
And I like your focus on potential conflicts and gray areas. There's a bunch of those, and especially, I'm sure state regs have changed some. We probably need to come back in line with that. or at least look at them, be sure we're still in line.
Well, the
I really
Attorney General.
appreciate your discussion on,
Sorry.
excuse me, go ahead.
The Attorney General vets these, so once they've been approved, they've gone through that process.
Right,
So as long as they're not in conflict, we can do things differently.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I got that, but in any case, I really appreciate you taking a deep dive into the town calendar. Because we fight that, as you know, every single year. Do we get enough time before town meeting? Do we get enough time with the finance committee? So I'm very appreciative of that, and anything we can do to help provide input, maybe we can make it a more livable calendar.
Well, we would like to sit down with your group at some point. And we also would appreciate having a little heads up. The charter provides that you give us your thoughts or your recommendations or articles on charter changes 2 weeks after you close the warrant, but it would be extremely helpful if we could have more lead time on something like that.
That's it, thanks.
Julie?
I don't have any questions. I think it's important that we all work collectively together so that there's
Absolutely.
adequate time on both ends. So I appreciate that, and I'm glad you're pointing that out, so thank you.
Mary?
I don't have anything either. Thank you, Sandy, and your committee. That looks like laborious work, but I'm glad you're taking it on.
It's interesting.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, you gave me the last line of the report that I could drive a truck through, so I'm going to make mention of the fact that we have, I had conveyed to you, but now you're in front of the Board of Selectmen, that we had a desire to do the Selectmen Select Board change in the charter. And since you're here, might as well put that out.
We are aware.
I figured you were, but I wanted the public to know that you guys were aware.
What's that, Don?
That's it.
Thank
It's
you.
hard work. I mean, it's kind of like reading a dictionary to some people, but it's important work.
Sandy, we'll work together to get a date for the two groups to meet
That would be
in
excellent.
the near future.
Yeah, I would agree, be great. I'd like to do it after we talk to the FinCom and maybe even include them in the discussion, or at least the chair, but I think we need to, I think it's better if we have a full on both boards rather than interpretation.
Agreed. And, I
Thank
think I
you.
see Joe making a note of that, so we will get that on the agenda after that. All right, Board of Water and Wastewater Commissioners.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. I think Dan's here. I thought my fellow commissioners would show up tonight, but I got Dan. That's the most important. All right, so I believe you got a copy of our presentation. I may have altered it here and there, but generally speaking, it is what it is. And the Board of Water and Wastewater Commissioners is comprised of a 5-member elected board responsible to the town of Harwich for the administration, maintenance, and operation of the water and sewer system. The Board of Commissioners is also responsible for the fiscal management of all department facilities, assets, capital projects, I should say, and land acquisitions. We have in-person meetings resumed at the Water Department Conference Room located at 196 Chatham Road and generally held bi-weekly on Wednesday mornings at 11 a.m. With the support of Channel 18, the Water Department Conference Room was equipped with recording equipment and videos of the Water Wastewater Commissioners meeting, and we are now available on YouTube. The board consists of Chairman Gary Carrero, who had other commitments, myself, Vice Chairman Alan Thompson. Our clerk is Noreen Donahue, and the commissioners Judith Underwood and John Gold. They took the night off. All the board members have been sworn in and completed the required Massachusetts State Ethics training, and there are no attendance issues to report. Accomplishments and projects, the rules and regulations and rates. This past year, the board worked diligently to update the department rules and regulations and rates. The board conducted several public hearings and was able to successfully update the water rules and regulations and adopted new sewer use regulations on May 26, 2021, and established new water and sewer rates. One of the projects that was very impressive and done in-house was the Pleasant Lake storage tank upgrades. The upgrades to the Pleasant Lake storage tank, which included increasing the diameter of the tank fill pipe, were completed in late spring of this past year. In addition to the interior tank work completed by the contractor, the water department staff also worked to upgrade exterior yard piping, saving the department around $200,000. They upgraded all the undersized water mains coming from the tank to give us better flow and increase the inside pipe to allow us to fill the tank quicker. On wastewater, Phase 2 wastewater collection system, the construction of Phase 2 collection system is now complete and recently authorized by Mass DP to accept flow. This reflects a major accomplishment in our efforts to restore the embayments and estuaries of Harwich. The water system improvements, the department is currently in early stages of 2 water system improvement projects. The design of the Route 28 water main replacement, probably installed sometime late 30s, early 40s, which is all of it is due for replacement somewhere along the way. And new source well exploration in North Harwich near the Well 10 field. In 2021, the Public Water Suppliers Award was received by the Harwich Water Department. We have been a recipient from 2006 to 2021, except 2010 and 2014, which they gave us a letter appreciating our efforts. Got to take a break from all those awards once in a while. Make sure you appreciate them. And then this is for resident water customers. The pumpage and consumption, so far in the 2021, the department has pumped just over 720 million gallons of water. That's a lot of water. But this is approximately 172 million gallons less than this time last year. Due to considerable drought conditions and the low groundwater levels, the board implemented odd-even watering restrictions at the last meeting in April. The drought declaration for Cape Cod was recently lifted. However, groundwater levels remain a foot lower than last year. We ask you to continue to conserve water wherever possible and to help protect the health of our water supply. Our website, harwichwater.com, contains many resources on water protection, conservation, and the most up-to-date information on water restrictions. On the service type protection plan, the department offers a water service plan which provides coverage for the repair or replacement of your old water service connection from the property line to your shut-off valve in the basement. Now, the department has a $68 annual fee, and you can't wait till the line is broken to expect to participate in the replacement, kind of like insurance. You need to join up, sign up, and be a part of the annual $68 fee before your water line breaks. The seasonal properties, the department provides seasonal turn-on and turn-off services. The board highly encourages seasonal winterization measures to ensure the safety of their water lines and water meters. There is a $50 fee for fall and spring turn-off. And we would appreciate folks to sign up for this program, especially if you're not going to be here. Irrigation use, the board can't express enough to our customers that conservation be considered when using irrigation. Customers should be familiar with the meter location and how to read the meter. This is an important measure to monitor water consumption, which also provides an opportunity to catch a water leak and make repairs to avoid a high water bill. And in conclusion, the Board of Water Commissioners would like the Water Department thank the Water Department staff for the teamwork, dedication, and to departments and boards, committee, the town administrator and town department for the continued support and services to the Water Department. I think that would cover everything. I just want to say for all those folks that have a seasonal home, I hopefully that you will either turn the water off, hire somebody to watch your house, or shut the water down before you drive off, because the water commissioners just don't have a overwhelming heart to forgive those types of leaks. So hopefully they're around this weekend or sometime here in the future, and we'll see this TV presentation and take our advice. Any questions, comments you'd like to make? I'm glad to attempt to answer them.
Thank you, Alan. Julie?
So, first of all, thank you and congrats on the $200,000 savings to the town. That's amazing. And also the water awards that we continuously get. And you're right, we get spoiled. I also was just wondering, the new source well that you're looking into in North Harwich, what's the time frame on that? Is there a time frame?
Probably 2 years.
2 years.
Okay. Okay. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what the first thing is the exploration, determine where the best spot on that well field, and stay away from well 10. We definitely need to do that. Currently, we have 3 wells that go back to 1936 that we're still pumping from, and probably will continue to as long as they provide a decent flow. But our community keeps growing, our demand for water keeps growing, and we need that backup, fire protection or whatever issues that confront us.
No, thank you. Thanks.
Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Picking up on that one last comment, Alan, this past year, we actually wound up with something like 8% increase in our full-time residents in Harwich. Is there a ceiling that you have for growth that would be independent for the town and land? Because everybody's focusing on sewage, but you can't live in a place unless it's got water.
Well, so far to date, as much as I know, no, there's no ceiling at as long as it's managed water. You don't know then.
Dan, you'll have to get up.
Dan Pelletier, Water Wastewater Superintendent. With respect to the ceiling, so we do have a Water Management Act permit that allows us 2.16 million gallons per day, or 788 million over the course of the year. We did apply for additional capacity in our permit renewal. That process started in 2010, and we're still awaiting our permit. So the state's taking their dear time with it. In addition, if we did run up against that ceiling, there's other things that we could do to limit outdoor usage to allow for domestic consumption in lieu of. So it would be just managing that ceiling, if you will.
Yeah, our water came from glaciers, but the state moves at a glacial pace. The other thing is, largely the folks in this community are reading the same newspaper that the folks in Chatham and Orleans are looking at. And I don't want to leave this unspoken. Do you have any problems with PFAS, or do you anticipate any problems with PFAS?
Yeah.
So we have not detected any PFAS to date in any of our wells. Can we expect it? We're measuring PFAS in parts per trillion, and my understanding is it's in everything. Our nonstick pans, our waterproof clothing. So, you know, I don't think it's inconceivable in the future that we would have to address it, but right now we don't have any detections.
Okay, thanks. And I also wanted to make mention of the fact that Alan's too modest here, that the water department itself precedes the modern selectman structure. It goes back to the 30s. It's been doing an excellent job.
Mary?
I thought it was impressive that we've used almost 24% less water this year versus last. Is that strictly from the odd even, or is there some other factor in there? That's a significant savings.
Well, yeah, I think that between the state's push on it, making people aware of where we stood, and our own, you know, when Dan speaks, people listen. So I think it's a combination of things.
Okay.
Yep.
All set, Mary?
Yes, thanks.
Larry?
Thank you, Joe. Alan and Dan, I have a question. A few years ago, when you replaced the Lotham tank with a Lotham basically run by electrical pumps versus a normal tank, you know, at the time I remember the discussions that was saved on capital expenses, but you thought it was going to be okay on maintenance, operational costs, not maintenance. How's that worked out after you've been in progress for a few years?
Good. So I did, one of the big cost-benefit equations we did when we went with the ground level storage tank and really looked at the electrical consumption. Okay. We were estimating it was going to cost about $25,000 per year, and that has been what that facility about uses. Yeah. So when we look at cost-benefit and replacing the tank, $25,000 a year, 40 years to get to a $2 million price tag, if you will. To build a new tank is going to cost $3 to $4 million. So I'd say it's right in line with what we projected.
Okay, thank you. It's good to actually be in line, right? Doesn't happen that often, it seems. My other question is, you know, you're replacing the water line on part of Route 28, but I think, Alan, you refer to this. We have a lot of old pipe in town. And I know you have a plan, at least I think I know you have a plan on replacing that over a long period of time. Is it worthwhile to share that so people know what's coming in terms of bringing it up to speed, our water pipes?
Well, you know, I do preach this a lot. I try not to make it a point not to hide this, because when you not only have old pipe, but you have undersized pipe, which, you know, I can remember going to town meetings where, you know, again, they were a little tight with the money. So instead of putting in a 6-inch main, they put a 2-inch main. Well, there's a lot of roads with 2-inch mains, which don't meet fire flows or any of that type of thing, but they get along all right because you can't develop anymore. The road is fully developed and it's working. And then the aging factor is all of Route 28 could be replaced. And we have asbestos pipe in part of that, you know, that should come out. But again, you know, just millions of dollars just to do 28. So we're trying to work with the state to put in the piping, get that section done while they're paving the roads. Again, so we don't have to pick up the tab for rebuilding the road, issues like that. So, and if we can just keep that program going, as far as the state roads go, it will help us to be able to do more. But we have these problems throughout town where there's many mains that that have been in Harwich Port, Harwich Center, have all 1930s, early 40s. Some of it's undersized. There's none oversized, and there's so much of it. We're just kind of, I deal with what's there, and if there's a break, we repair, and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
it's old.
Well, what I'm driving at is that it's old, it's undersized possibly, but it's a lot of money. And you've been giving a lot of thought on how to do it in a way that we can afford it and still keep us safe and in water. I think it'd be good to broadcast all the work you've done on that, so people have a better understanding of not only what the issue is, but all the thought you're putting into it to do it in a responsible and efficient manner.
Yeah, it's the only way we could do it. I mean, we live off of the revenue we take in, our water rates, and if we're lucky, we get a bonus from here or there. But we're always looking for free money. And, so, if you have a few extra bucks you want to get rid of, please call us. We'll take care of it.
Larry signing
Mr.
checks.
Chair, I'm in love with the concept of free money, as you know.
All set?
That's called free cash.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Moving on, old business, discussion and possible vote to convey some portion of deeded land to the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust. And Joe, I will ask you to open this.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, those present and those watching at home. What you have in front of you is a proposed deed. However, I want to identify two items on the agenda. First, you'll notice the scrivener's error where we've used the number 6 twice. That would be a sequential numbering so that the last item there, map 40 parcel Z5, 265 Sisson Road, is known as item number 7. And I say that because item number 3, which relates to map 56 parcel P12, 0 Depot Street, is being held out from this draft deed, and that's because Katie Klein of KP Law has indicated that there are still some legal questions around that we're not able to get corrected by tonight. She thinks it may take a few weeks for that to happen. So I asked if it was advisable to present to the board the deed that you see in your packet, which gets to the 6 other parcels. Again, all 7 of these were voted unanimously by town meeting in 2019 under Article 61 for the board to convey those properties to the Affordable Housing Trust. The other thing I'll mention, you can see the draft deed in your packet. I want to just emphasize that I will not be the notary on your signatures, as I will be a signer on behalf of the trust. So if you vote this evening, you are respectfully directed to go see Ellen in the Selectmen Administration Office, and she'll notarize your signatures.
Thank you, Joe.
Certainly take any questions if you have them.
So if I'm understanding, the motion will include to approve the deed, which will be 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7, as listed in the packet.
Correct.
And then my only question, Joe, this was voted May 6, 2019, Article 61. Why are we just doing this now?
I discovered that it was not done by previous administration when the Affordable Housing Trust at a meeting in October asked for a list of properties that they owned and had to inform them that the only property they owned is what they had recently acquired from the Marceline estate. And so based on that, took every effort to work with council to get it before you to meet the wishes of town meeting from over 2 years ago.
Thank you, Joe. And then timeline from our vote tonight, before the trust can start working on these properties, as we told town meeting in 2019 we were going to.
So if every board member is able to sign tomorrow and have notarized, Selectman Howell at the Affordable Housing Trust today made the motion, and the trust voted unanimously to then have the trust come in and sign the documents and notarize. So then it just needs to get recorded at Barnstable Registry of Deeds, and then once we have that recorded, I'd notify the trust, and the trust would then have full care, custody, and control of the parcels.
Thank you. Open it up to the board. Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was the reason for the motion. I made it contingent upon approval of the Board of Selectmen so that we wouldn't be wasting any time at all. But we are stuck. We can't discuss an RFP at Sisson Road. We can't do almost anything because the properties we thought we owned, we don't own. So I urge you to do this.
Thank you, Don. Mary?
No questions.
Julie?
I don't have any.
None.
So I guess the only other question I have is 265 Sisson Road. 265 Sisson Road is a parcel of land that also has a building that we lease on it.
Correct.
And we are gonna transfer care, custody, and control of that entire property to the trust, or a portion of that property to the trust?
So neither the vote at town meeting nor the deed provided by council took any action relative to the building. So I would rather leave that interpretation up to attorneys. However, the vote of town meeting was to convey that parcel of land, no restrictions on what went with it,
Don?
or exclusions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The history of that particular parcel is that the trust, in order to be able to garner public support, has assured the HJT that the lease is not in play, that what we do to develop the property is absent that building. We're going to honor, in any scenario, we would honor the existence of that building in the lease.
So what language are we gonna have in the motion to make it so that we're not changing the dynamic of that lease and who controls that lease with the Harwich Junior Theater?
You could say, with the exclusion of the footprint of the existing building.
Footprint and parking for some
Well,
parking?
parking may need to get reconfigured overall.
This is a little troubling to me because this is the parcel that we could start to develop right away. I mean, this is a property that we've looked at. This was earmarked as one of the first parcels, but to me, this is a bit of a stumbling block. That the town, I don't see how the Board of Selectmen can convey the deed of this property to the Housing Trust when we're in an active lease with an organization on part of this property, which includes part of the parking, and there's been no maps or anything done. Now, I will say that 3 years ago, Don, I think, I brought this before the board, because I see no reason why we wouldn't move the Harwich Junior Theater into our cultural center, which we have an auditorium for, and it makes more sense to lease that and turn this building into affordable housing. And I think that should be a direction that if we do this, the trust takes, or at least has a conversation. But I would look to the town administrator. You've heard my concerns. How are we gonna do this?
What I can recommend tonight is that if the board wanted to remove any parcel from the deed, I would work with council to correct that. You could still authorize the deed conveyance and sign them when the document's ready, as we've done with parcel, map 56, parcel P12, item number 3. That will have to come back before the board, because the chairman raises legitimate questions. You know, my research that was forwarded to council indicated that it's referred to as the recreation building, and the property card refers to it as property of the recreation department. But neither I nor council were able to find anything that confirmed that that was actually under the care, custody, and control of the rec department, either then or now. So there are a number of questions that go with that. The lease document does refer to, whereas the town is the owner of a parcel of land containing the former Harwich Recreation Building and an accessory shed, singly known as the Recreation Building, collectively the buildings, and thereon collectively known as the premises. They're using town here in the form of the Board of Selectmen, and if you were to convey it tonight, it, in my opinion, raises questions about that.
So I'm not trying to slow progress, and this again is one of the ones that I think we can actually start right away. And the trust is the town of Harwich, as the Board of Selectmen is the town of Harwich. So I would think that we could work collectively to resolve this and put the deed forward. I guess I'd open it up to questions from the board. I'll start with Mary.
That just sounds kind of messy. I think that has to be clarified before we convey it. I mean, if the three of you don't know what it is, I wouldn't even begin to pretend to know. So I think that needs to be clarified. I would suggest the motion back out 3 and 7 and we bring them back as fast as we get an answer. I like Michael's idea of moving the junior theater to the cultural center.
Don?
Speaking as a former president of the HJT and remembering in the last iteration of me being a selectman in the 2000s, I don't think they're going to agree to that. I mean, they have the lease and they can't be told that they can't continue with the lease if they don't want to move. Their argument was they're often doing one, if not two, plays backed up in rehearsal while the current production is going on, and they don't feel that the former middle school could accommodate what they want to do. Secondarily, I don't recall, they were using the parking, but what we leased them, I recall, was the building. And the reason that it was called Rec and Youth wasn't because they had jurisdiction over it, was because it was vacated as a one-room schoolhouse and was repurposed for Rec and Youth to use. And they had their office there, which is really iteration of it being the rec building was. But
Thanks.
I agree with you. I mean, there's, that's
well,
a good question. Like, how do you exclude the envelope of the building in language? And right now, it's not being done.
Well, thanks for that explanation, but I'm not sure they get to dictate the terms of our lease. I think that would be a town of Harwich Board of Selectmen
But it's
decision.
still got years left, is what I'm saying.
Julie?
Did not, excuse me, didn't that whole lease issue come up previously?
You were on the board.
I was on the
Yeah.
board, right?
Yeah, a few years.
Yeah, so I also thought that part of that discussion was also looking at between trying to decipher rec versus HGT. And in any case, I agree with both of you to keep it clean. I say we back it out of this, bring it back and clarify that, but I also thought we had some additional information that maybe I'm recalling incorrectly.
Larry?
Yeah, I'd like to back it out and clarify it. I'm not sure we can force them to move to the cultural center. That makes a lot of sense. But nevertheless, the property needs to be defined. And Michael, yours point, that's been a discussion for years that we'll use that land for affordable housing around that building or with that building. And I don't want to get that muddled going forward, that we're not giving that proper consideration.
Joe? Mary?
Does anyone know when that lease is up?
We should dig it out anyway, because it really needs to, we really need to be informed what they leased. I don't think the parking was part of it, is my recollection.
Joe?
Just to inform the board, and it's in the packet, but Article 61, there's a certified or attested copy by the clerk in the packet. Under Article 61, item E is described as a parcel of land located at 265 Sisson Road, identified on Assessor's Map 40 as parcel Z5, parentheses, containing 1.11 acres, more or less, close parentheses, and being the premises described in Book 9770, page 13. And then if you look at the draft deed provided by council, under parcel 7, 265 Sisson Road, that reads, a certain parcel of land located at 265 Sisson Road in Harwich, described as follows: the land and buildings in that part of Harwich known as Harwich Center, bounded and described as follows. And then it gives the directions on the northwest, on the east, south, and on the west, and then said parcel is also shown as parcel Z5 on Assessor's Map, meaning there's nothing in the town meeting article that excluded the building, and in fact, it's included in what was originally recorded, which is why council wrote it the way that she did in the draft deed. It contemplates the whole parcel being conveyed by the board to the trust.
Okay, Tim?
She did.
Can I just follow up on that? The leased area is noted in here as well.
Yeah, I just saw that. But there's no end date or anything on the lease. So I think to move forward, we take this one out.
Okay.
And then the only other comment that I'll make, and I'd like to hear from the two members of the trust, town meeting, as this was explained, we were gonna convey these pieces of land for affordable housing trust purposes. At what point does the Affordable Housing Trust give them back to care, custody, and control of the Board of Selectmen if they do not use them for housing trust purposes? Don?
The question is framed a little bit sideways. The properties, we've had this discussion for a long time, and I've never withheld that thought. The properties were either to build on or to generate capital to do other affordable housing projects. So the answer from our perspective would be, if they're buildable, they won't be coming back. We're either going to build on them, or we're going to wind up flipping them to create revenue to be able to do something even bigger somewhere else.
I agree. Purposes was my word, which didn't mean build.
Okay. got
If
it.
the trust does not use these properties, it is the position of the trust to give them back to the Board of Selectmen.
I would imagine so. I mean, nobody's trying to do a midnight robbery on anything. The fact of the matter is that we just wanted the jurisdiction in order to be able to do one or the other.
Okay.
We're not planning on just sitting on them, and we're not geared to being a landlord.
All right, can I get a motion?
I move that we vote to convey some portion of deeded land to the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust, including map 61, parcel B1A, 0 Oak Street, map 61, parcel B1B, 0 Oak Street, map 63, parcel J1, 0 Depot Street, map 63, parcel J2, 0 Orleans Road, map 63, parcel J3, 0 Depot Road.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, Joe,
Thank
as
you.
read. Discussion and possible vote to establish a 2022 annual town meeting warrant article for taking by eminent domain 276 Queen Anne Road. Joe?
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you'll recall from, I believe, your meeting last week, 276 Queen Anne Road is deemed to be surplus property. The town has no governmental use for it. So the next step would be the process of taking by eminent domain to clear title, as you'll see with the next item under 70 Willow Street, meaning the town would go through the effort to make sure that there's clear and clean title from the town, so that when it's offered it up for sale for whatever use, that the future buyers know that there is no issue with the land.
Were we gonna build a pet cemetery or proposed pet cemetery? And it may be a crematorium, I think, was up at some point, and we don't know that we actually own that land? I guess my point is, aren't we the owner of record of this land? And didn't we get to be by knowing we were the owner of the record?
So I can't speak to the prior statements you made about the land and the various uses, but it's not different than 70 Willow Street, where it's known that the town owns it. However, we want to ensure clear title because efforts in the past may not have been as ironclad as we believe them to be. It's a belt and suspenders approach for sure, but it's to make sure that the town can get the best possible value out of that by taking that step.
So we know that we don't have clear title on this property, I guess, before we vote this.
I'm not saying it that way. I'm saying that out of a preponderance of good effort to make sure we do, eminent domain is suggested for both properties.
I get Willow Street because we've rebounded it, so I get Willow Street. I don't understand the process, which is gonna take us a year before we can put that on the market, minimum, that we haven't determined whether we own it or not.
So if I could, then I can certainly defer to the board and your knowledge. Then if it were an eminent domain, you do want to then create the article that town meeting would vote to allow the board to sell it.
That's for sure, yes.
Yeah.
I guess comments from the board on the first part of this. Do we know enough to vote to take it by eminent domain, Joe, or should we look and see if we have clear title to it?
Well, I can answer it this way. It would be helpful if the board voted to establish a warrant article where at least they're seeking the approval of town meeting to convey the land. And then I can work with staff to determine what we think the status of that particular parcel is and whether eminent domain is required. In each instance, however, we'd be looking this evening for votes of the board to create articles at town meeting to authorize the board to convey these for sale.
And that, I agree with that part of it. the eminent domain
So if
part.
you at least took the action of creating the warrant articles, I can get moving on that. Specific to the question of if eminent domain is required for 276, I can still evaluate that, but we'd have the article moving through the process.
So the wording in the motion can be to take by eminent domain if we need to.
Correct.
Okay. Don, questions, comments?
No, I mean, I've said before that it'd be really nice with the minuscule commercial zone that we've got in order to put something back in the tax rolls where people can make a living doing something other than retail, and we get tax money. I mean, this is something that I think is important to happen. It would seem to me that, isn't this like just a chain of title question for an abstractor?
Well, we thought that was the case for 70 Willow, but not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
Mary?
I'm totally in favor of selling them both. My only question is, do we need two motions here? One to take it by eminent domain and one to put a warrant article on to sell it?
I would argue that the vote to establish the warrant article
Yep,
to go to town meeting is what I need to begin the process.
okay.
As I work with staff and council, they'll be able to review the title documents and all that and make a recommendation as to whether eminent domain or anything else is required.
Okay.
Don?
How about a motion that actually says to take necessary action in order to dispose of the property? Would that get you to where you want to go?
That works for me.
Larry?
Because that would include eminent domain if it was
Okay.
required.
I want any motion that will move us forward.
Julie?
I'm in favor of moving it forward. I'm still fixated on, do we have a site plan for this property from when we looked at it before? Because I still have in my head that there's a piece of it that wasn't buildable.
This is what, Julie, I'm sorry?
There was a piece of it that wasn't buildable.
I think that's wrong. I think it's all upland, so.
But that's what I want to know. So do we have a site plan that we can at least, I mean, I have no problem with going forward with the motion, as Don just
I
stated.
haven't seen any documents yet related to 276 Queen Anne, but I'm sure when I work with staff, we'll find them.
Okay.
We have a sketch with some grave sites on it.
Trying real hard not to.
Go ahead, can we, Don, do you want to, or Mary, do you want to go ahead and take a shot at the motion?
Sure, and Don will help me if I wander. I vote that we establish a 2020 annual town meeting warrant article to take the necessary action to sell 276 Queen Anne Road.
Second. No corrections
No
necessary.
correction, thank you.
Okay, moved in second. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
I move that we vote to establish a 2022 annual town meeting warrant article to take the necessary action to sell 70 Willow Street.
Second.
Moved in second. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you.
Contracts, Mary? And
I move that we.
that's the, when you do it, the
Oh,
correct
thanks.
amount is that one.
I move that we vote to authorize the chair to sign the Robert B. Hour change order number 7, Phase 2, Contract 1, which includes Continental Drive and Witta Drive, as well as a few other cleanup items in the amount of $1,509,245.
Motion, do I get a second?
Yeah, for discussion purposes, but I'm trying to understand this. Did we not just 2 weeks ago accept a contract decrease of a little over $1 million?
Moved in second. We're into the discussion, and Larry asked a question.
And how's that happen now? They gave us back $1 million, and now they're taking it 1.5 million. I'm trying to follow the
Yep.
The
I'm gonna
discussion
refer to
here.
our wastewater expert.
Is it a different fund, different,
So the 1.5 is made available through a balancing change order on both contracts 1 and contract 2. So because both of the projects are now essentially complete, pump stations, everything is built, what they did was basically zeroed out unspent line items, which resulted in a surplus of about 1.8 million, of which the 1.5 is being reapplied to this contract to complete Continental and Witta.
and so this isn't a new charge for us. This is using existing funds?
So this is all within the existing appropriation from the original, I think it was 22 point something million from town meeting. What was it? 10.3 million or so that was for Robert Hour's contract. Ever everything was built, it was only about, I think, I have the figures right here.
That's okay, Dan. My question is, this isn't costing us more money. This has already been in the contract.
Correct. This is not costing
I'm just trying to
any
follow
additional
the
funds.
decrease and then increase.
Right, right. So this is not any additional money. This is all within the existing.
It's different portions of the same contract.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion, Julie?
So I just also had a question on this in terms of, so I understand Witter and all that and the whole history with Continental and Witter. But this is going only to that portion. Do we have a map of the secondary next phase, contract 2, that would go all the way through the other areas that were originally dropped off of when we had phase just 2, then it became 2A and B?
Yeah, so we have not, so there was a portion of Fredericksburg, Williamsburg, Huckleberry Path, Sugar Hill Drive neighborhoods, as well as Continental and Witter that were removed due to the overrun with Contract 1. The other streets, aside from Continental and Witter, have not been incorporated back in yet, partly because we're still working through how much sewering needs to be done in those particular watersheds where those streets that were stripped out reside. Trying not to get too deep, but if we don't need to do additional sewering and pick up Sugar Hill Drive, Huckleberry Path, then we wouldn't recommend doing those. This was brought up, really and brought to us from Continental and Witter. The town made a number of promises to them, so that's kind of how this one got brought back in. As far as the other streets, that would be done as we're evaluating kind of the next step, including that 2.1 million for design that was approved at town meeting to address Pleasant Bay and Round Cove subwatersheds.
So, yeah, okay, because I'm on Old Carriage, and we were incorporated into it, and so was Austin Road, and I know
Right.
those were dropped
Right.
initially, but I do believe all of those people think the same thing is going to be happening.
Yeah, and I think that's part of a bigger discussion that, we need to have from the town's position is, what are we doing and why are we doing it? If we're going to make the commitment to do the, 5 or 6 streets that were removed, that would certainly help me guide the design to include those. Right now, my understanding is that we are sewering to meet our nitrogen removal requirements as laid out in the CWMP. If we're going to go above and beyond that, there's no skin off my back. But
just need
if that's the direction, then
I get it,
yeah.
yep, okay, thank you.
Mary?
But isn't that decision when the updates to the plan get made? That's when those other streets will come into play.
Kind of, sort of. So the updates to the CWMP are going to be evaluating, yes, it will inform the need to do those streets or not.
To do or not do.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
okay. Thank you.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I don't think it's a surprise. I'm not going to vote for it because town meeting authorizes it, doesn't require. On the other hand, Mary's question is actually the pertinent one to me. I mean, I'm worried about this. I'm worried about the entire complexity of the 40 years and the promise to clean up the environment. And I'm not as interested in doing anything more for a particular area that gets it to a buffer above what we were supposed to achieve. And I'm unclear about what we're trying to do here, other than we promise people something that they feel affects the value of their homes, so we got to give it to them. I think the money would be better spent building in another area that was part of another, one of the sequences.
Mary?
But aren't we also, what we pay Chatham, we have a certain capacity that we can send to Chatham.
Yep.
Which we can pay for X, or we can pay for X plus Y, the same price.
No, I get that, but there are other phases. And all I'm saying is that I would rather apply it to another phase as opposed to overdoing one phase, but it's going to pass anyway.
Okay.
Well, and I would argue
Thanks.
that I would rather finish what we started and fulfill our agreement with Chatham and get our money's worth, because the taxpayers have spent a significant amount of money buying flow in Chatham. I would also argue that it wasn't just a promise made to these residents. It was a letter sent by our town administrator and our wastewater consultant that says, start the work, get it engineered. And they spent a significant amount of money doing it. And then cleaning up the environment is the key. And as we embark on the next one, phase 3, contract 1, which is the 2.1 million that's been approved, also for East Harwich, also to potentially send more flow to Chatham that we've already done. If we're going by streets, because what we're mandated to remove today for nitrogen is not what we're going to be mandated to remove tomorrow for nitrogen. And our 40-year plan that is now 7 or 8 years old calls for a certain amount of nitrogen that was the science at the time. And you know, chemicals of emerging concern, there's many issues that this town is going to be faced with. And kicking the can down the road and coming back to these areas after the town has already spent the money with Chatham to send this flow. And our O&M costs, the fixed O&M costs are borne by Harwich. We agreed to it. It makes absolutely no sense to me. And then this appropriation included a lot of streets. It was only a meeting with Christopher Clark, CDM Smith, and I'm not sure who else was there, that they started pulling streets off of that plan. These streets were in that plan. So there's no question in my mind that we were supposed to be doing this, that we are supposed to be doing this. So therefore, I will support it.
And as a follow-up to that, because I was on the board at the time in that meeting, you know, with these two properties, streets happened, you know, we similarly had, and I can only speak for my street, but we had meetings with engineers and people engaged them and such. So I think it's only fair that what was on the plan at the time and what the town communicated to all these different people on all these different streets, you know, should be respected, because it's true. Numbers are gonna change. Why wouldn't we do the smart thing with the flow?
And two, I think it's important, you know, to just note that the town allowed properties to transfer with the understanding that sewer was coming, properties that had failing septic systems or septic systems that needed repair, that we allowed to be waived with, you know, the sewer coming. So I think it's important to note that happened.
Thank you, Dan. Don?
Yeah, I'm not going to try to relitigate this whole thing. All I do want to clarify is I did not intend to say that we're going to set these people adrift, and I just proposed to do something alternative and reimburse them for whatever out-of-pocket expenses they had.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Aye. 4-1. B?
I move that we vote to approve Chapter 90 funds for drainage installation on Witter Drive and Continental Drive in the amount of $484,000.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
None.
Don?
Yeah, it's not inconsistent. You guys just voted to allow the roads to be open up to do the other things. So I think if we're doing it, this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Don. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0, Joe?
Thank you.
I move that we vote to approve Barnstable County Regional Government of Cape Cod intermunicipal agreement for information technology services between Barnstable County and the town of Harwich in the amount of $8,075 per month.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Town Administrator's report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'd like to yield the balance of my time to offer happy birthday wishes to my daughter Maggie, because it's her actual birthday, and I promised her yesterday I would do it, so.
Happy birthday, Maggie.
Happy
Thank you
birthday.
to Margaret
Birthday,
Rose Powers, happy birthday. and
Well,
thank you.
objection, where's our cake or something?
If I had it, you'd have it too.
That's a parental obligation.
Thank you. Selectmen's report? Mary?
I don't have anything.
Don?
Nothing.
Larry?
Nothing.
Julie?
Nothing.
And I have nothing. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.